Have you ever looked through a gun sight, knowing that the moment your finger twitches, someone else's life ends? It's not like the movies. There's no epic soundtrack, no heroic slow motion, just crosshairs, and a choice you never thought you'd have to make. The first time I fired the main gun of a Sherman tank, my hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the realization that I was about to kill another human being. Before that, I'd been a loader, stuffing shells into the breech without knowing what or who we were aiming at. You're just part of the machine. Fast hands, steady rhythm, no thinking, just surviving. But the day I slid into the gunner's seat, that all changed. My name is Daniel Mercer, and I was 19 when the war pulled me out of Wheeling, West Virginia, and threw me into the belly of a steel beast roaring through Belgium. You never forget the sound of a tank engine when it's angry, or the metallic taste in your mouth right before you squeeze the trigger. They told us we were liberators, but it's hard to feel like a hero when you're watching a body fly through the air from a direct hit, when you see a boy, barely 16, surrendering with a crucifix clutched to his chest. And it's even harder when you lose your crew, men you ate with, slept beside, froze with, bled with. This is not a story about medals. It's not about glory. It's about what war does to a young man sitting inside a steel box with only a periscope to see the world. It's about crawling over the dead to survive, about losing a piece of yourself with every mile you roll forward. So if you're ready, I'll take you inside the Sherman, not just the tank, but the mind of the boy who became its gunner. Let's go back to the day everything changed. It started the day after I saw Pearl Harbor in the newspaper. I was at the movies with my best friend, Peter Lawson. We came back to his house still talking about the film, some detective flick, nothing special. But when we walked through the door, his father, Dr. Lawson, was standing in the kitchen, white as a ghost. He didn't say hello, didn't ask about the movie, just looked at us and said, "Pearl Harbor's been attacked. We're at war." I was 17, high school senior, no idea what the world had just become. But I knew it was coming for us. We graduated that spring. By summer, everyone had a job or was waiting for the draft. None of my friends got called right away. But me? I was too impatient. I volunteered for the next draft batch, convinced we'd all go together. We didn't. I left alone. They put me on a train out of Wheeling and sent me to Fort Hays. That first night, I still had my civilian clothes on. Next morning, they handed me a box, told me to write my address on it. I packed everything I'd been, jeans, boots, memories, into it. And stepped into the army naked. Shots, shaves, uniforms, my old life gone by noon. My father had warned me, "Don't tell them you're a truck driver, son. Tell them you're a student. They might send you to school." I listened. Told the assignment officer I didn't want anything with a steering wheel. He smiled, nodded, then handed me a slip for a tank unit. "You said no steering wheel," he said. "Tanks use levers." So that's how I ended up in the 80th Armored Regiment, Headquarters Company, 2nd Battalion, 8th Armored Division. First time I saw a Sherman, I didn't know what to think. It looked like a monster, steel hide, wide mouth, 5-man crew packed inside like sardines. Driver, bow gunner, loader, gunner, tank commander. My job? Loader. No view of the outside world, just a periscope, and a mountain of 75mm shells to keep feeding into the breech. You don't feel like a soldier. You feel like a gear in a machine. But machines break and men die. I was the youngest in the crew. The others had already seen combat. They didn't talk about it. I didn't ask. I was just the kid from West Virginia trying to do my part, trying to survive. But that wouldn't last long. The first time I rode into France, it didn't feel like liberation. It felt like someone dropped me into the waiting jaws of something ancient and hungry. We landed about a month after D-Day. By then, the beaches were already won, but the war had only started to breathe fire inland. They sent me south through England down to Wells in Somerset, then to Portsmouth, then to France. By the time my boots hit French soil, the smell of diesel and death already hung in the summer air. They put me straight into a Sherman tank, loader, just like training, except this time it was real. The crew had been through hell. They didn't talk much, didn't ask my name, didn't tell me theirs, just nodded when I climbed in. And when the hatch closed, the world disappeared. Inside a Sherman, you don't hear much. Just the roar of the engine, the clank of treads, and sometimes the thud of your heart against your ribs. There was no room to stand, no way to stretch. You curled where you could, leaned against whatever didn't hurt, and prayed the next artillery shell wouldn't find your steel coffin. We rolled through Belgium, pushing toward the Siegfried Line. Sometimes there was action, skirmishes that ended before you could blink. Other times we just drove. Hours on end, metal, mud, and fear grinding through your bones. One night we pushed with the 1st Infantry Division near Mons. I remember the heat, the silence, then suddenly movement in the hedgerows. The tank commander barked, "Heat, 2 o'clock." I slammed a shell into the breech, gun fired, boom, gone. I didn't see what we hit, didn't know if it was a truck, a nest, or a farmhouse, didn't ask, didn't want to know. That's what being a loader was. You fed the gun, you followed orders, and you kept the machine running. But then something changed. One morning, after a long night of travel, we rolled into a village on the edge of the Ardennes. My commander stepped out of the tank. Didn't come back. They said he was reassigned, no goodbyes, no explanation. Next thing I knew, I was moved up to gunner. Different seat, different view, different weight. Now I had crosshairs, now I had to aim, now I was the one who pulled the trigger. The first time I pressed that foot pedal and watched that shell arc into a house 200 yards away, I knew what I'd done. I knew there were men inside. Maybe boys. Maybe someone with a photo of his mother in his pocket. But the next time they fired back, and the time after that, and the time I watched a tank just like mine get hit, watched the turret fly 10 feet into the air, it stopped being about conscience. It became instinct. Shoot or die. We pressed on through the freezing cold of December. The snow turned red too many times. And then came the word. Piper's SS troops, no prisoners, no mercy. If we were captured, we'd be executed. That was the day war stopped pretending to be strategy. It became personal. It became survival. And I hadn't even seen the worst of it yet. The snow fell heavier that week, blanketing the fields, muffling the sounds of war. But you can't silence a Sherman tank. That engine, it howls. And every German within a mile knows what it means. We were deep into Belgium now, chasing rumors of an SS armored column that had overrun American lines. I was in the 5th tank of our platoon, middle of the pack, close enough to follow, far enough to get left behind. My tank commander was Lieutenant Nolan, fresh face, first day in combat. He was brave, too brave, the kind that didn't know yet what fear could teach you. We reached a fork in the road, a narrow turn leading into a village called Remst. The plan was simple: secure the crossing, push through, link up with Patton's Third Army. Simple plans die fast. The lead tank crested the hill, started down toward a stone bridge under a railway pass. That's when it happened. The flash, the thunder, the second tank exploded mid-turn, treads flew, flames poured from the turret. We froze, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Nolan shouted, "Get eyes on that bridge." I swung the turret. scanned through the periscope. And that's when I saw them, camouflaged in the ruins, an 88mm anti-tank gun, German crew loading fast. "He now," Nolan barked. I loaded, fired, direct hit. The enemy gun folded like paper. But it was too late. 4 of our tanks had already rolled into the kill zone. By the time we caught up, they were gone. Burning hulks, bodies still inside. Lieutenant Nolan climbed out of the turret, stared at the wreckage, no words, just smoke in his eyes. We turned south. Orders were clear: keep moving, take the next village. That day, we pulled into a place called Freyr. It was quiet, too quiet. Our tank crawled out of the woods and into a field, snow crunching beneath the treads, breath fogging the inside of the scopes. Nolan spotted something. Movement in a 2-story house on the right. "Put one through the top floor," he ordered. I adjusted, fired. The shells slammed through the wall. The house groaned like a dying beast. Then he told the driver, "Pull up beside the window." That's when Nolan tossed in a grenade. Boom. A German stumbled out the front, bleeding. Nolan put a bullet through him. We moved again, across the road over a low stone wall out into an open field. But the moment we stopped, chaos. Small arms fire, yelling, infantry in the open, pinned down. Then a shadow stood up behind a hedge, a German with a Panzerfaust. He fired. Missed us, but hit the ground near the infantry. Shrapnel flew. Men screamed. "Traverse left," Nolan yelled. I spun the turret, found the shooter, but I couldn't line him up. The turret was off balance, stuck in the mud. The German fired again. This time, he didn't miss. The shell hit us, right behind my head. Everything went white, then red, then black. I felt something slam into my back. Nolan dead. He fell forward, fists clenched. Blood poured down over the breach. I could hear the infantry yelling, "There he is, there he is," but no one fired. The German reloaded, calm as a priest. I knew if I stayed in that tank, I'd die. So I climbed out into a new kind of war, one fought on foot, one where steel and armor couldn't save you. And the worst part? I wasn't done yet, not even close. I hit the snow hard. Cold shot up my spine like ice water through a broken pipe. Blood soaked the side of my head. I reached up, fingers came back red. Lieutenant Nolan was dead. The crew scattered. We were exposed. I turned. Behind me, our Sherman was burning. Smoke billowed from the turret, rounds cooking off inside, pops, snaps, echoes of death. My loader, Private Hastings, stumbled out after me, wide-eyed, shaking, but alive. We sprinted, not away, but toward the only cover we had, a farmhouse, stone walls, shattered windows. Inside, infantrymen were taking cover, scattered across the floor, pale, bleeding. They looked up when I burst in. Me, just a corporal, covered in blood and ash, screaming, "Get away from the windows." No one moved, so I yelled again, louder. That moment, that was the only time I ever pulled rank in the war. I wasn't trying to lead. I was trying to keep someone from dying. We patched each other up with what we had. Hastings wrapped my head. I tied off his arm. No medics, no orders, just instincts. I remember my head feeling cold. I asked the kid next to me, "How bad is it?" He glanced, said, "Doesn't look too bad." He was lying, but I appreciated the comfort. That's when I noticed one of the infantry guys, leg bleeding out badly, couldn't walk. I got him on my back. No plan. Just knew he wasn't going to make it if I didn't. We sprinted across that frozen field, bullets cracking past our ears, heavier rounds thudding into the snow behind us. I didn't think about dying. I just didn't want to drop him. We reached the tree line, collapsed in the brush. I was coughing, bleeding, but we were still breathing. A jeep rumbled toward us, dust-covered, busted fender. In the back was a wounded major. The medic looked us over, said, "We've got room for one more." I pointed to the kid with the leg. "He goes first." The doc nodded, but then turned to me. "You're bleeding from the head. You're coming too." I didn't argue, just climbed in, held on as we bounced down the frozen road. At the aid station, they sat me down. A nurse peeled off my helmet. The doctor didn't flinch, just grabbed tweezers, started pulling metal from my skull. Each piece clinked into a metal tray. I asked if I could keep one. The doc handed me a jagged sliver, still warm, still red. I put it in my pocket. That night I finally laid down. Cots lined the room, 5 of us, maybe 6, all walking wounded. We were quiet, too tired to speak, too thankful to question why we were still breathing. But that silence didn't last. A sergeant burst through the door. "Get outside, back in the truck." We groaned, begged, "We're wounded." Didn't matter, they needed us. And so back we went. By the next morning my body gave out. I collapsed, dehydrated, numb, couldn't move my legs. They carried me into a Belgian farmhouse. An old woman, kind eyes, brought me a warm brick wrapped in cloth, set it by my feet. That warmth, it was the first time I felt safe in weeks. But the ambulance came, and just like that, I was on my way to Paris, then the coast, then home. But not all of me made it back. Because part of me is still in that field, dragging a wounded soldier through the snow, blood in my eyes, smoke in my lungs, and a jagged piece of war still resting in my pocket. There isn't a day I don't remember the faces, the ones who made it, the ones who didn't. Sometimes I still see Lieutenant Nolan, standing tall, hand on my shoulder, right before the shell took him. He didn't get to come home, neither did dozens of others, men I sat beside, laughed with, bled with. But me, I made it out, broken but breathing. They say time heals all wounds, but that's not true. Time just teaches you how to carry them. Some nights I still dream about the turret, the smell of oil and hot steel, the jolt of the main gun firing, the silence after someone doesn't answer on the radio. I still hear the infantry yelling, there he is," and no one pulling the trigger. Not because they were cowards, because they were human. War changes you, but it doesn't always make you harder. Sometimes it just makes you quieter. After I was pulled off the line, I ended up in England with the 95th Bomb Group, helping where I could, fixing gear, writing names, trying to matter. But the truth is, I never stopped being in that tank. That's why I kept the shard, that jagged piece of steel, pulled from my skull. It's not a trophy, it's a reminder of what I saw, of who I was, and of those who never had the chance to grow old. If you ever meet a veteran, really talk to one, you might see something behind the eyes, a pause, a flicker, a weight. It's not always pain, sometimes it's pride, sometimes it's guilt, most times it's both. So what am I most proud of? Not medals, not rank. I'm proud I did my job. I'm proud I got out and kept going. And above all, I'm proud that in the middle of hell, when it mattered, I carried someone. That's the story I want remembered, not of war, but of what we did for each other in it. If this story meant something to you, if it made you pause, made you feel, then don't let it end here. There are thousands more like Daniel, men and women whose memories are fading into silence. But you can help keep them alive. Hit that subscribe button, not for the algorithm, but for the stories that deserve to be told. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, a veteran, a son, a daughter, someone who's never seen war, but should understand what it costs. And leave a comment below, not just what you thought, but what you felt. Because remembrance isn't passive, it's a choice, every single time. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next story.